Welcome to Email Friday, the first month of my extreme productivity experiments. This is a recap of the extreme productivity experiments I did in 2013, and then now sitting here in April 2015. What am I doing differently? What's changed as a result of those experiments? So Email Fridays, why Email Fridays? What was the premise? What was the hypothesis? So the idea behind this was to flip the idea of no Email Friday, which was quite prevalent in kind of 2008, 2009. There were a lot of companies doing this thing of just the reaction against email, and the reaction against that email overload was, let's have Fridays off, Fridays away from email, where Fridays is about, collaboration and face-to-face and doing stuff that's not on email. So I wanted to just change that around and say, what if you only had email one day a week? What if you only checked and processed your email between 9 and 5 on a Friday, and the rest of the week you had no access to it whatsoever? So that was the idea. What was I trying to prove? Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that Think Productive talks about in its workshops. So I talk about in the book, How to Be Productivity Ninja, the idea of the 800-20 rule, how so much of your email is just low value noise, and actually great things happen when you step away from the email inbox. That's where the impact really happens. So I wanted to just kind of test that out first and foremost. Is that actually true? And also just the idea of that sense of connectivity having a good side and a bad side. So connectivity can be great for getting certain decisions really quickly, but also it's creating constant distraction in the way that you work. So if I was able to take away that distraction, what would I have left? How would I work, and what would be the differences? So that was the hypothesis. It started obviously at the start of January, so most people were still away on their Christmas break, just kind of getting back in. So the first week or so, there wasn't really a sort of noticeable difference. The first Friday that I went on and processed, there was only like 150 emails from the first kind of week back. So week 2, I was starting to get into the kind of several hundred emails a week kind of situation. There's a couple of really interesting and unusual, surprising things that happened. The first one was Thursday evenings became Christmas Eve. Like the idea of being able to go back into my email inbox the following day and to be able to get my emails tomorrow, like it became really exciting. It became this thing I was really looking forward to doing. So that was quite surprising. The other thing that was quite surprising was about 2 or 3 weeks in, I started to feel quite rudderless. I started to feel quite disconnected from certain members of the team, particularly members of the team who would do most of their communication with me by email. And that for me was obviously my problem to solve, not theirs. So I started to kind of use the phone a bit more, and I was surprised by the fact that I didn't use the phone more actually, but like I started to use the phone with particular people. And it also really made my preparation for our daily huddle. So we do this kind of daily 15-minute quick team meeting every day in the office. And my preparation for that had to be totally spot on, because that was the time when I was effectively bringing my emails to the team. And I think actually improved the way that I used those huddle meetings, and the way I communicated face-to-face was definitely better as a result of that. It also made me definitely more ruthless in terms of how I deal with email, and ruthless with filing. So once you start only processing once a week, it's actually much quicker to do that as long as you're being ruthless with how you file. So I would file more stuff that I didn't even really need to keep, but it's quicker for me to file. And that's the only way, when you've only got one day a week, to really make sure you're going to get back down to 0 by the end of Friday, is to just be ruthless with filing, ruthless with deleting. And the surprising paradox that emerged for me was the less time you spend on email, the less time you need to spend on email. So if you apply this massive constraint of only being able to look at your email on Fridays, actually you receive less email, you've got less email to do, and it becomes easier to solve email on the Friday and get back down to 0, because some of that stuff's dead. So there's more that you can hack in bulk rather than dealing with stuff individually. So all kinds of really nice kind of things started to emerge. One thing that nearly went wrong was my accountant sent me some stuff that had to be actioned on a Thursday. And guess what? My accountant had an out of office back going, Graham's not here. My accountant called me up. He said, hey, can you complete these files? I had to sign something that had to be in to file with the government for taxes by the end of January. And I wasn't going to see it in time on email. So he contacted me, that was fine. If he hadn't have contacted me and just sent me the email and just relied on me getting back instantly, I probably would have got a fine for that. But it was fine, it didn't happen, it was all dealt with, it was fine. So yeah, nothing went wrong, nobody died, everything was fine, and certainly there were some very positive effects in terms of what it allowed me to do with the rest of my time. The main one of which was there was a whole bunch of stuff that I needed to do around our workshops to do with new slides, train the trainer materials, writing certain things, doing some tutorial videos for our team. And those things have been sat on my to-do list for a while because they're things that really need a lot of space. They were not necessarily kind of the upfront biggest priority for me at any point, but they needed to be done. And suddenly having this like oasis of space, like Monday to Thursday, just having this time that was like, I have no email to check. I'm not in Outlook. What do I do? Suddenly made those things much easier to get through. So, big win for me, and something that was a big confirmation of the whole idea of the experiment in the first place was just the amount of space I was able to create for creative stuff. So I think, if anything you do in your job is creative, if it's writing blog posts, if it's writing reports, if it's having ideas, if it's thinking about the strategy of the team or the organization, you need space in order to do that. And putting your email focus only onto Fridays and having email as the only thing you do on Friday, and you don't do it the rest of the week, just created this amazing amount of space that I was able to really focus on the stuff that mattered in that space. So that would be probably my biggest learning. What have I done since? So we're now in 2015. Really, ever since that experiment finished, my structure around my days and my weeks and around email has been very heavily influenced by that experiment. So I now email Tuesday and Thursday evenings for about an hour and a half. I have one caveat to that, which is my assistant has access to my inbox the whole time. So if something comes up that's urgent, I do have the ability to either dive back in or have them deal with it, rather than me needing to be constantly kind of checking and being distracted by it. And I'm human. I'm very aware that if I have a distraction tool in front of me, I will get distracted. It's very difficult to just focus on that creative stuff that matters when you have that distraction in your face. So Tuesday and Thursday evenings is my general email time. The other thing I've started to do is the morning part of the day I tend to work from home and the afternoon in the office. So kind of have two parts of the day. The morning is create, the afternoon is collaborate. So everyone knows that I'm in the office in the afternoon. That's when I'll be doing meetings. That's when I'll be doing the emails and the communication, that kind of stuff. But the mornings is very much about me being offline, creating that space in the way that I did during that experiment. Really for the first time consciously ever in my life to really think about productivity in that way and to create kind of almost like a two-tier sort of part to my working week. So I've done that pretty much ever since the experiment in January 2013. I found it a really useful way to work. Again, it's like I am the master of my own schedule in that way. Not everyone watching this will have that, I know. But even just things like doing mini versions of that. So in a morning, if you're in the office, just having an hour where you're away from your desk or you turn email off and you sit at your desk with no email. So I think there's always ways that we can just create an intention around what which part of the work we're doing. Are we in create mode? Are we in the communicate kind of modes? Are we setting ourselves up to be distracted versus are we really zoning in on that focus, that stealth and camouflage as we talk about it in the Ninja book? And I think really there's some useful lessons to be learned from that. So that's January of my extreme productivity experiments. Next up is February and the Dice Man experiment. See you then.